Intelligence that has been declassified and released is irrefutable. I'm going to let Karoline speak to Secretary Rubio.
I'll speak to both questions. First, on Secretary Rubio, he put out a statement in 2020 following that Senate Intelligence Committee report, and he said what they found is troubling. We found irrefutable evidence of Russian meddling, which the Director of National Intelligence just confirmed for all of you, that Russia was trying to sow distrust and chaos. But what's the outrage in this that Secretary Rubio did not say at the time, the Democrats were saying at the time, is the fact that the intelligence community was concocting this narrative that the president colluded with the Russians, that the president's son was holding secret meetings with the Russians. All of these lies that were never true.
Karoline Leavitt and Kaitlin Collins have once again reignited their blazing rivalry, and this time it erupted into one of the most explosive verbal battles ever to rock a White House press briefing. Collins came in with fire in her eyes, ready to throw chaos into the Trump administration at every single turn, tossing sparks like a storm, determined to burn everything in sight. But Karoline didn't flinch, not even for a heartbeat. She stood firm, sharp, and unshaken, answering every strike with precision and undeniable strength. And here's the best part. Every scorching exchange is right here for you to witness. So prepare yourself, because this showdown isn't just intense. It's about to detonate before your very eyes.
Just on this, Director Gabbard, you referenced the past intelligence reports and assessments on this, including that 2017 one that was signed off, as Ed noted, by every Republican on the Senate Intelligence Community, including the acting chair of the time, now Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who said in a statement that they did not find any evidence of Russian collusion, but they did find, however, is very troubling, and they found irrefutable evidence of Russian meddling. One, are you saying that he's wrong in that statement that he made then? And secondly, what would you say to people who believe that you're only releasing these documents now to improve your standing with the president after he said that your intelligence assessments were wrong?
Kaitlin stormed into the room, swinging hard as she zeroed in on Tulsi Gabbard's motives for dropping explosive evidence that threatened to rattle her political hero, Barack Obama, to his very core. Obama's name was already blazing across headlines in all the worst ways, and Kaitlin was desperate to drag the spotlight somewhere else before the fire spread further. Her desperate tactic? Smear Tulsi, drag her through the dirt, and hope the story shifted away. But Gabbard wasn't blindsided for even a second. She flipped the narrative on its head in one scorching strike, burning through the spin and exposing the man behind it all. What followed wasn't just a rebuttal. It was a political inferno that lit up the entire room like fireworks on the 4th of July.
First, I want to correct something that you stated, which was citing the Senate Intelligence Committee's report as being one and the same. I think you said the intelligence community. The Senate Intelligence Committee has a very different function than the Office of the Director of National Intelligence.
Kaitlin walked into this battle armed with nothing more than a dull kitchen knife. But Tulsi Gabbard came charging in with a double-edged sword that sliced straight through her fragile facade. It became embarrassingly clear that Kaitlin didn't even grasp the difference between the Senate Intelligence Committee and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, two powerhouse institutions with completely separate roles. She fumbled and blurred them together like a rookie, and Tulsi schooled her on the spot in front of millions watching. The humiliation was so sharp you could practically picture the egg dripping down Kaitlin's face as she scrambled to fix her blunder. And just when she thought the firestorm might ease up, Tulsi tossed her straight into the hands of Karoline Leavitt for another merciless roasting. The stage was set for the next act, and it was going to be brutal.
The intelligence that has been declassified and released is irrefutable. I'm going to let Karoline speak to Secretary Rubio.
I'll speak to both questions. First, on Secretary Rubio, he put out a statement in 2020 following that Senate Intelligence Committee report, and he said what they found is troubling. We found irrefutable evidence of Russian meddling, which the Director of National Intelligence just confirmed for all of you, that Russia was trying to sow distrust and chaos. But what's the outrage in this that Secretary Rubio did not say at the time, the Democrats were saying at the time, is the fact that the intelligence community was concocting this narrative that the president colluded with the Russians, that the president's son was holding secret meetings with the Russians. All of these lies that were never true.
The queen of verbal takedown struck once again, and her target this time was none other than Kaitlin Collins. Kaitlin tried twisting Marco Rubio's words into a tale they were never meant to tell. claiming that Rubio, once a Trump critic turned supporter, had confirmed solid proof that Russia had invaded America's politics to spread division. But here's the shocking truth. Rubio never said there was evidence of collusion between Russia and Trump. That was a fantasy cooked up in Democratic backrooms and spoon-fed to the public by their loyal media allies. Karoline wasn't about to let that falsehood stand. She came prepared with receipts, context, and a verbal wrecking ball that crushed the lie in real time. Right then and there, the polished media narrative crumbled to dust on air. Karoline wasn't just defending, she was commanding the battlefield, exposing bluffs and making every strike cut deep. And believe it or not, this was just the opening round.
He also said at that time, we discovered deeply troubling actions taken by the FBI under Comey, particularly their acceptance and willingness to rely on the Steele dossier without verifying its methodology or sourcing. The Steele dossier that many outlets in this room ran as the gospel truth, and it was cooked up and paid for by the Clinton campaign.
That's the kind of fearless firepower you don't see every day, and Karoline Leavitt deserves every ounce of credit for it. She stood tall, unapologetic, and scorched every single media outlet in that press room that once clung to the Steele dossier as if it were carved into Holy Scripture. No fact checks, no serious investigations, just pure partisan hysteria, dressed up and sold as journalism. I still remember when the Steele dossier dominated every channel, every panel, every late-night host treated it like a golden ticket, spinning wild fantasies about Trump-Russia collusion. They didn't just report it. They squeezed it dry, turning it into endless drama like it was some twisted season of Game of Thrones. But when the smoke cleared and the truth came crashing down, that it was nothing more than unverified gossip and political fan fiction, the media was left humiliated. And Karoline made sure they wouldn't just remember it. She made certain they would feel the sting of that shame live and loud.
As for your second question, Kaitlin, I think who is saying that she would release this to try to boost her standing with the president? Who has said that?
Well, the president has publicly undermined her when it came to Iran. He said she was wrong. He told me that she didn't know what she was talking about. That was on Air Force One on camera.
The only people who are suggesting that the Director of National Intelligence would release evidence to try to boost her standing with the president are the people in this room who constantly try to sow distrust and chaos amongst the president's cabinet, and it is not working.
Karoline Leavitt delivered yet another blistering takedown, solidifying her place as one of the fiercest and most unshakable press secretaries ever to step behind the White House podium. This time, CNN's Kaitlin Collins tried to stir controversy by asking if Tulsi Gabbard's release of damning evidence against Barack Obama was nothing more than a calculated stunt to win Trump's favor back. But Karoline wasn't buying a single word of it. She obliterated that storyline instantly, making it crystal clear that Tulsi had never hinted at such a motive. Karoline called it exactly what it was: a desperate fabrication cooked up by the left to ignite division inside Trump's circle. As Karoline piled fact after fact on the table, Kaitlin's composure crumbled before the cameras. You could see the frustration written all over her face as her narrative collapsed in real time. What followed was one of the tensest, most electrifying exchanges ever witnessed inside the White House briefing room.
I will just answer your question directly. I am with the President of the United States every day. He has the utmost confidence in Director Gabbard. He always has. He continues to. And that is true of his entire cabinet, who is all working as one team to deliver on the promises this president.
Karoline Leavitt slammed the final nail into the coffin and buried Kaitlin Collins right there in the briefing room. Her takedown was so sharp, so airtight, that it left no space for spin or escape. Karoline exposed the ugly truth everyone suspected. The left is so consumed with destroying Trump that they'll invent lies, splice video clips, and twist reality itself just to push their agenda. The so-called evidence Kaitlin waved around was nothing more than a heavily edited 18-second snippet of Tulsi Gabbard speaking about America's dealings in Iran. A journalist dangled that clip in front of Trump, hoping to stir chaos, but Trump, true to form, simply pointed out that it didn't fully capture what Tulsi had actually said. That was it. No outrage, no rejection. Yet the anti-Trump media twisted it into a circus, screaming that Trump had betrayed Gabbard. Karoline tore that sham apart on the spot, ripping the mask off media manipulation and leaving Kaitlin cornered, exposed, and scrambling under the harsh glare of the cameras.
You laid out that the documents revealed that the Obama administration did not publish a December 2016 presidential daily briefing that demonstrated that Russia did not steal the election. Trump was receiving these briefings at the time because he was president-elect. Are you of the view that that information was kept out of the briefing because then President-elect Donald Trump would have seen it?
I don't have any documents that speak to exactly what the new guidance was that was given as the reason for pulling that document, which, by the way, still has never been published until we released it last week, Friday. One could assume that they didn't want President Trump to see a document that came from the intelligence community that would contradict the Russia hoax narrative that began through the Hillary Clinton campaign with the Steele dossier.
Democrats love to strut around wrapped in false moral superiority, but pull back the curtain and it's nothing but smoke and mirrors. They accuse Trump of playing dirty, yet their own schemes make his every move look tame in comparison. Here's the raw truth. They knew from day one that the Russian collusion narrative was a hoax. They had the intelligence, the classified briefings, the undeniable reports, and still Barack Obama and Joe Biden chose to bury the facts instead of telling the American people the truth. Instead, they leaned into the lie, pushing the Steele dossier like it was gospel, weaponizing it to smear Trump and manipulate public opinion. But now the mask has slipped, and the truth is undeniable. They weren't defenders of democracy. They were master manipulators of deception. The same people who preach transparency were the ones selling fiction to the nation. Karoline Leavitt was absolutely right to call it out. The American people deserve truth, not staged theater. And now, the curtain is falling on the left's biggest performance yet.
The president said yesterday that Obama committed treason. Do you or the White House believe that the Supreme Court's immunity decision protects Obama from prosecution?
Look, I can speak to the president's feelings on this matter. He spoke to all of you yesterday in the Oval Office, but I also spoke to him about this morning. And he wants to see all those who perpetuated this fraud against our country, who betrayed our country and the Constitution, to be thoroughly investigated and held accountable. And it's been 10 years of this. And I would just add, based on everything the director has said and declassified, all of you in this room should go through it and take a look at this report and review the intelligence, because unfortunately that hasn't happened. And many of the people who perpetuated this hoax, Clapper, Andy McCabe, James Comey, and many others, have been hired by major networks in this room to go on television and continue to spew these lies, knowing that they are lies.
I am convinced that every single figure who dragged this country into the nightmare of the Russian collusion hoax must face real accountability. No one should be spared. How that reckoning arrives, whether through the courts, political fallout, or other consequences, can be debated. But one thing is undeniable. The damage was deliberate, and the deception was vast. Could Barack Obama himself be forced to answer for this? That's a question only the justice system, perhaps even the Supreme Court, can ultimately decide. But what cannot be denied is that his closest allies, many of whom Karoline Leavitt fearlessly named, played central roles in engineering this massive political fraud. They spread falsehoods knowingly, shattered public trust, and weaponized federal institutions against a sitting president. That cannot be swept under the rug. The American people deserve justice, and the age of political elites escaping responsibility must end now. This wasn't just dirty politics. It was calculated sabotage dressed in a suit and tie, and it must never be forgotten.
If you all recall, just flashback to 2016 and the years after, the entire Trump 1 presidency was embroiled in this scandal that was perpetuated by the Democrat Party. And you had major Democrat Party officials in this city, namely Adam Schiff, Hillary Clinton, Elizabeth Warren, who went on television and told the American people, Donald Trump is an asset of Russia. It was a lie. They always knew it. Hillary Clinton herself said that President Trump would be a puppet for Putin. Senator Tim Kaine at the time called President Trump Vladimir Putin's defense lawyer. Adam Schiff stated, and one of the worst things a lawmaker can do is to tell the American people, I know something you don't know, it's just classified and I can't tell you. And that's what he said. I can tell you that the case is more than that. I can't go into the particulars, but there is more than circumstantial evidence now. And not enough people in this room, not enough journalists in this country pushed Adam Schiff to say, what are you talking about? What evidence do you have?
The legacy media didn't just fail to challenge the lies. They became part of the scheme, marching hand in hand with Democrats toward a single mission: stop Donald Trump at any cost. Objectivity vanished, integrity evaporated, and journalistic principles were tossed aside like scraps. They latched onto every flimsy shred of so-called evidence as long as it painted Trump as the villain. No hard questions, no verification, just sensational headlines dressed up as reporting. They didn't merely echo the falsehoods, they blasted them across every screen, amplifying them until the public believed it was unshakable truth. And when reality finally clawed its way to the surface, did they retract? Did they apologize? Not once. They simply moved on, hoping the nation's memory would fade. But it hasn't, and it won't. The division they fueled and the trust they shattered can't just be erased. These weren't watchdogs. They were attack dogs, unleashed for political destruction. Karoline Leavitt ripped the mask off this coordinated scheme, exposing how partisan politics and a complicit press manufactured one of the biggest frauds in modern history. The Russian collusion hoax wasn't just a smear, it was a calculated assault on truth itself. And now that the lies are exposed, accountability must follow. The era of unchecked corruption ends here, and it ends now.